Hello everyone, Andrew Cuneo here. Today I'm going to play some Explorer. So when March of the Machines Aftermath came out, there's a bunch of oddball cards in the set which I don't think really fit into standard decks, but they do fit a little bit into some older formats. So one of those cards is Nissa Resurgent Animist. This card has landfall that it's basically a Lotus Cobra, and then it also has this additional line. Then if this is the second time this ability is resolved this turn, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal an elf or elemental card. So I'm going to try it in an Omnath shell. This is an Omnath deck I've played in the past where this is the good Omnath, the one that's completely broken, and it's available in Explorer in its originally printed form, which is the really ridiculous version. So the way this deck works is that you try to generate multiple landfall triggers each turn, so you can generate tremendous amounts of mana and just rip through your deck. The way you generate a lot of landfall triggers isn't by making a lot of land drops usually, though. It's by using Ashaya to turn your creatures that you cast into lands. Ashaya is an elemental, Omnath's an elemental, even bad Omnath is an elemental. So they all trigger Risen Reef, which is an important part of this deck. And then I've got, Leafkin Druid, also an elemental. I've got a few Llanowar Elves. This isn't a great Llanowar Elves deck. It does want to ramp, but it really wants its cards to be elementals, and it also really wants to make its land drops. So it's not like you don't want to play 23 lands and 8 Llanowar Elves. This deck has 26 lands in it, plus 2 Glasspool Mimics. The Glasspool Mimics are actually kind of important, both because you can copy Risen Reefs with them, and you can also sort of reset your Omnath with them. The way this deck wins a lot of the time is by generating a bunch of 4 damage triggers off of Omnath, where you're going to put multiple Omnaths into play over the course of a turn. Storm the Festival is kind of your big payoff card, where you'll see once we get into the game. So once this deck gets going, it kind of rips through its entire deck pretty easily. Nissa isn't allowing the deck to do anything new, but it is maybe the missing piece to make the deck a little bit more competitive. It was already pretty good, but I would say it was more like a tier 2 deck. Going over the lands, you basically just want to play 4 colors of mana. I don't have any triomes or whatever the lands that are like triomes but aren't actually triomes are called. So my mana base doesn't have any of the 3 color comes into play tap lands. I have Mana Confluence in my deck, and I also have Secluded Courtyard. I don't have 4 Secluded Courtyards because it can make it hard to cast Storm the Festival at times if you draw too many Secluded Courtyards. Definitely want to have 4 Fabled Passages because they're so good with Omnath, which means you want to have, a decent number of basic lands. I've got 5 basic lands in my deck, 2 forests, 1 plains, island, and mountain. So it is possible to run out of basic lands as you're playing. That's something you need to keep in mind. And then just an assortment of shock lands, a couple fast lands. I'm not really sure that the beyond 4 Fabled Passages and playing the basics, I think just sort of like a mix of dual lands is fine. You don't want to play too many that come into play tapped, or maybe none at all. Looking at the sideboard, I will say with this deck, sideboarding is pretty tricky because this is very much a synergy deck, so you don't want to board a whole bunch of cards in and out. So you're going to only be looking to sideboard like 2 or 3 cards, or maybe even 0 cards at times. So you want just a few high impact cards. So I've got a bunch of removal spells that are going to be efficient removal spells in particular matchups. I have 1 Chandra's Defeat in my deck, which is only really good against like a mono red deck, but I don't know if I'm really going to play against that. Aether Gusts are just general catch-alls against red and green decks, obviously. Rending Volley is pretty important because it's a good sideboard card against Greasefang decks and also like a blue-white Spirits flying deck. Some Abrades. These are mostly in case I play against Mayhem Devil, Cat Oven decks. I have one Yasharn, which is obviously very good against Mayhem Devil, but I found the card to just be kind of clunky, so I didn't want a ton of them. And also, this is one of those things where I don't want to have to board in a ton of... I don't want to board in a bunch of 4-mana cards because I don't want to board out my Omnaths, obviously. And Ashaya, you can trim one, but it is really important to this deck to get Ashaya into play eventually in the game. And then Storm the Festival and Escape to the Wilds, I think you need to have this top end. So that's all a long way of saying that I don't think you want to have a lot of expensive cards that you're boarding in any particular matchup. Some Mystical Disputes, those would obviously be if you play against like a blue-white control deck, or if you play against a mono blue spirits deck. There's probably more cards in the sideboard right now for a mono blue spirits deck than you would really want, so you might not actually be able to board them all in. I'm not 100% sure what I would do if I had to play that matchup. I have one Tireless Tracker in my deck. This is just if you want to have a little bit more grindy ability in your deck. For sideboard, yay, and same thing with the Escape to the Wild. So these are basically, if you're playing against Thoughtseize decks, you probably want to board out some of your low impact cards for more cards that are going to give you card advantage. Because I don't think I ever board out lands when I play with this deck, and you are playing sort of 28 lands if you count the Glasspool Mimics as lands. So you are going to have a lot of lands, so the way you want to try to beat a Thoughtseize-based deck is by just having more high-impact cards than they can realistically Thoughtseize. So that's the deck. Let's see it in action. I don't want to mulligan a hand like this because it is important to get a ramp creature into play on turn 1 or 2. This is a Lutri deck. Interesting. Probably not good, but interesting. I think if Lutri didn't have the additional 3 mana to pull it into your hand, this might be it might actually be a reasonable thing to do. Try and play Lutri as a companion. I remember in Standard, before they nerfed the companions, I tried this one time in a big tournament. It wasn't as good as the good decks, but it wasn't awful. It made my Leafkin Druid disappear. I guess that's how it's going to be. I'm not going to play around Censor or Jawari Disruption. They would have played it last turn if they had it, and they didn't. Also, they're playing a singleton deck, so it wouldn't surprise me if they had both those cards in their deck, but they're not going to have a ton of copies. This isn't horrible. They're not doing anything but trading 1 for 1 with my early ramp creatures. So this could be Saw It Coming, or maybe Auron's Epiphany. I don't think I'm going to try to clone the Glasspool Mimic, or Glasspool Mimic the Cobra, just because it goes so bad if they just have any burn spell. Just 2 for 1 me. Just behold the multiverse all along. Now they're playing with fire. If they don't have a counter for this, it's probably going to be pretty hard for them to get it off the board just because it's big. They have Censor. Couldn't play it around it. I couldn't play it around it that time. Alright, hopefully they don't have another counter. Spell Pierce. Alright. get this Nissa in on the action. Obviously not going to Glasspool Mimic the Nissa because it's legendary. That would just send one of my cards to the graveyard for no purpose. Did I play the wrong way on that turn? No. Maybe I did, actually. There's really not much going on. Brutal. They're going to loot through their opt. I'm kind of worried that this foretold card they have is Auron's Epiphany. They did go bottom. Please don't have another counter. It seems like the foretold card doesn't almost have to be saw it coming at this point. They would have certainly cast it if it was Auron's Epiphany. They've already played Volatile Multiverse. Maybe it's some weird... Maybe it's like Demon Bolt? I don't think it really matters what land I get here. No, it was saw it coming all along. Alright, let's draw another Storm the Festival. Or an Omnath. An Omnath would be nice. Should I keep this in my hand in case I draw an Omnath? Maybe. I'm getting to the point where I would like to draw 4. I would like to gain 4 life if I draw Omnath. I feel like I tried a bunch of stuff this game and none of it worked. Or did it? Probably. Short of them just having a bunch of lands in their hand, I guess they could have a counter that they drew this turn. No, I'm dead. You were the wrong Omnath. If you had just been the good Omnath, I wouldn't have died to that. Alright, this is the exact kind of matchup where I want some more grindy cards. So I'm going to be boarding in Tireless Tracker and Escape to the Wilds. And I think I also want my Mystical Disputes. Maybe not all of them. Given that this deck has so many lands in it, it's okay to board out Llanowar Elves in matchups where you're not trying to be fast, I would say. I also want to board out my Lotus Cobras. I'm going to try trimming one Glasspool Mimic and one Lotus Cobra. It really just seems like I just need to exhaust their counters. There are times with this deck where you're going to be forced to name something other than elemental with Secluded Courtyard. Like in this case, Snake possibly would be named. You really want to avoid it if you can, so I'm actually just going to play the Mana Confluence this turn. Like you might have to name Snake or Elf some of the time. They cycled Sweltering Suns last game, so they could easily have something like that. I did board out actually a fair, like I boarded out all my Llanowar Elves and one of my Lotus Cobras, so in theory I'm less vulnerable to that kind of thing, but in practice this hand is somewhat vulnerable to it. I was going to get to cast a 5-drop next turn. No. I'm gonna wait with the Fabled Passage for as long as I can, just because it'll allow me to generate Omnath triggers or Lotus Cobra triggers down the road. Come on, Field of Ruin, the Mana Confluence. You don't want me to have access to any color mana, right? Guess I'll crack it this turn so I can cast the Leafkin Druid. And a copy of Flame Blessed Bolt. Okay. I think I'll play Escape to the Wilds first, just because it can't be censored. They discarded two pretty good cards. I don't know what their hand is. Fabled Passage would be a really nice draw next turn. Oh, Fabled Passage. Oh, Rending Volley of their own. Not really that fair. I'll get this thing up to 4 toughness. They don't seem to have a way to kill it right now, but their deck does have a bunch of cards that can deal 3 damage in it, so I might as well get it out of reach of that. Bunch of weird. Can't say I really enjoyed this. Jumping with one of these Leafkin Druids. If they dare to attack. Yeah, it seems like a pretty clear attack from their perspective. That's not great for me. You might be able to do this. Yeah, they're probably dead at this point. Although I don't have any Lotus Cobra type effects in play, so I might run out of mana. Now we have a Lotus Cobra type effect in play. And I think I'm at least going to get to the point where they have to jump block. So when this happens and you're putting a second copy of Omnath in play, you almost always want to keep the one that is the new copy so you can get the triggers again. Occasionally you might want to keep the old one just so you can get to attack, but that is not the case here. So my choice is to tap the Omnath or attack with it. I think it might be better to tap it. Well, it was clearly better given that they conceded, but I'm not sure I was going to be able to kill them there. Rending Volley does not kill Nim, is it? Chandra's Defeat does. Do I really want a card like that, though? I don't think so. They only have one Niv Mizzet in their deck, obviously. So I'm not going to board an Aether Gust or Chandra's Defeat. Now let's see if they have Opt, or it might just have Play with Fire. Or Consider. Same thing as Opt. I guess I screwed up my land sequencing a little bit. I made it so that I wasn't going to be able to play an Omnath next turn. So like if I play this Boseiju, next turn I'm not going to have the right colors of mana to cast Omnath. I need to shock one of these lands into play. Last turn it wasn't that big of a deal because I think I might have played the Risen Reef anyway. But this turn it is actually a pretty big deal that I shock. Also, I don't really care that much about my life total here, and they do have a couple of targets for Boseiju. They have Torrential Gearhulk and a Shark Typhoon if the game goes super duper long. This seems guaranteed to get countered, but I think I want to use my mana for something this turn. Hopefully this gets countered, and then next turn my Escape to the Wilds does not. We'll have to see. Or if this gets countered, then hopefully I draw Stormy Festival and it doesn't get countered. They gotta counter this if they can. They made a treasure token instead of killing the Risen Reef. That, I suppose, makes sense if they are digging for a 3-mana counter. I'm just thinking about, should I play Breeding Pool untapped? Or should I put Secluded Courtyard on Snake? I think I'm going to put Secluded Courtyard on Elemental. And I'll just go down to 14. I don't think it's going to be a big deal. 2 damage, probably. In a different matchup, the 2 life may have mattered more. Uh-oh, they're shocking into play too. What's it gonna be? What it was gonna be was nothing. Okay, they shocked into play because they want to Memory Deluge into 3-mana counters. Their whole game plan is to find 3-mana counters. So far it hasn't happened. It worked that time though. Alright, so I'm gonna Glasspool Mimic one of these Risen Reefs just because it's a lot of value and they're tapped out, so it's safe. This Nissa should really be an Elf Elemental rather than an Elf Scout. It's not reasonable. That wasn't reasonable either. That was just rude. So they have a counter for Ashaya. They can't field... Can they Field of Ruin, Ashaya? I think you might be able to, actually. Non-basic land. I think you can. Forgot about that. I guess I'll play one more of these. Hopefully my opponent doesn't realize that you can do that. Let's storm this festival. I think even if they Field of Ruin the Ashaya, they probably can't survive this turn. What's the hold up here? What are they doing? Didn't they have Saw It Coming in the graveyard? Yeah. What are the odds? 2 matches, 2 people playing just weird companions that aren't very good. Please don't be able to kill my Lotus Cobras. Maybe this wasn't worth it. I'm gonna get Omnath into play, but I did have to burn my Fabled Passage. Like, now next turn is not going to be as good. Kind of depends on what their deck is exactly, and given what they played, who knows. I guess they're probably a Fires deck, given what they played. Fires of Invention, that is. Yeah, I probably should have set up for better turn 4. If I just played the second Lotus Cobra and saved the Fabled Passage, I could have had a really good turn 4. Yep. Fires of Invention it is. Please do not have Supreme Verdicts. Which one of these do I want to get rid of? I think the Fires. There's a reasonable chance I can kill them in my turn. No, I'm not going to kill them. Or is there a way? So they're going to go to... Oh, they're just dead. They're going to 8. Never mind, I am going to kill them. No, they're not going to 8. No, they're going to 8. I somehow picked, like, one of the only ways to not have a guaranteed kill. Not my finest work. So, what is their deck exactly? Probably am wishing I had more. You got to be able to do better than Naturalize in Explorer, but cards that did that kind of a thing, but I don't have those. I think I just have Aether Gusts. They almost definitely have Leyline Binding in their deck, I would say. Do I want to be fast in this matchup? So it's the Llanowar Elves matchup. Let's maybe try that. Like I said at the beginning, this is not a deck where you really want to make dramatic changes when you're sideboarding. I'm not going to keep a 1-land hand. I knew it. I knew they had Leyline Binding. I guess I maybe should have gone Llanowar Elves, leave up Aether Gust, just because if they have Enigmatic Incarnation, they could maybe do something really nasty. Fires isn't nearly as scary. Enigmatic Incarnation, this is probably going to be bad. I probably am doomed. I think they're going to get Agent of Treachery. Or Atraxa. Atraxa, okay. I can gust the Atraxa. Of course, they can just use fires to get it, or use Enigmatic Incarnation to get it back. Supreme Verdict. I think I'm basically just dead here. I could have played Omnath, but it would have just been like Omnath pass. So I think I want to instead leave up Aether Gust. Definitely just going to let this Atraxa hit me. See if they're going to Supreme Verdict. I'd be very surprised if they choose to do that. Just going to Aether Gust the Enigmatic Incarnation. So that's going back in their hand, but they can't cast it this turn because they've already played 2 spells with fires. So they're just going to be getting Karuga back here, or getting Karuga in their hand. Oops. Alright. I screwed up. I forgot that Arena wasn't going to give me a stop. You win, opponent. They were going to win anyway. So I need to crack this turn if I want to be able to play one of my Omnaths. Turn 3. The problem is I have to decide between whether I need red or blue mana. Guess I'm going to go red just because I think I have less red mana in my deck. And then it's very important that I shock in a Temple Garden there instead of playing a Forest, because the Leafkin Druid only taps for green, and I need the option for something that's going to tap for more colors. Hopefully they don't have a ton of Leyline Bindings. I think my hand is going to be pretty fast for their deck if they don't have Leyline Binding. Or I suppose I could have like Aether Gusts in the deck at this point. It would be kind of weird to board in a bunch of counter spells as a Fires deck. They do have Supreme Verdict, which is going to be annoying if they have it this game. I want to play around Supreme Verdict. I think I could probably afford to. If I play around Supreme Verdict, I mean, I could play Ashaya and this Omnath this turn. But if I do that and they just untap and play Supreme Verdict, I'm in a world of trouble. Pitch 2 cards. I do have Supreme Verdict, so I'm glad that I didn't just dump my whole hand on the board. Not in stellar shape now, but it's not a complete disaster. Oh, it's non-land permanent. Ashaya is a land. Ashaya being a land is awesome. Alright, I'm going to hold my land drop until after the Storm the Festival in case I find an Omnath, which I did. Sadly, I don't have a Risen Reef, though. Is there any reason to play either of these cards? I don't need to have both creatures in my hand to max trigger the Omnath next turn, so I'm going to hold the Elemental in case I find a Risen Reef. This exile lands. Does it say non-land? It probably says creature or artifact, and that's sad. I would have liked it to say non-lands. Guess I could have gained 4 life. Maybe that was a minor misstep. zone something good. Not the worst. Probably could have done better, though. Definitely going to hold this to get my Omnath back, rather than just having an additional forest in play. Suppose I could also use it to Boseiju the Reflection of Kiki Jiki. Oh no. Hellish Norn. I don't think I can beat that card. I guess my way to beat it is to just play a giant Ashaya. I probably need to change my sideboard to have something that gets Hellish Norn off the board. This doesn't seem good for them. They just turned my 1/1 and my 0/3 into 3/3s. Maybe I can deck them. They just drew a lot of extra cards. Is a nice decking still on the table? This doesn't seem winnable at this point. Certainly not if they found... Well, I guess if they found a Leyline Binding, they do still have fires in play, so they're going to have to chump once, and then probably dead. Does Glasspool Mimic do anything for me? I can't mimic their stuff, right? Yeah. I have another Golem token. If I attack with more stuff, they're gonna go chomp, eat, take 5, go to 4. Probably worth sacking 2 creatures to deal 5 damage. It's really just all going to come down to if they found a Leyline Binding to get Ashaya off the board, or some other card to get Ashaya off the board. Which they drew, like, 7 cards, 6 cards, something like that last turn, so it happened. Well, I guess it's just going back in their hand, so why not with the fires, but... This is a very weird looking card. A Golem token with a regular border. In the colors I'm playing, what could I have that interacts with Elves? Alright, I'm dead. Is this a good hand? Not really. This is a much better hand. So I'm going to keep, and I'm going to bottom one of these lands. What's the right choice? Not the Botanical Sanctum. Probably it's the Mana Confluence. This is a little bit greedy, but Fabled Passage is really good for this deck. Mana Confluence can be a little bit awkward. It kind of depends on whether they're playing a strategy that can kill this turn 1 Llanowar Elf. Because if they can't kill the turn 1 Elf and I just get to cast the Risen Reef on turn 2, then I'm very happy to have kept the Fabled Passage. If this dies to Fatal Push, it's going to be a little bit sadder. For some reason they don't fear the Risen Reefs. Maybe they're like a Mayhem Devil deck and they think they're going to be able to get the Risen Reef under control eventually. They're Grixis deck and they're just going to bone pressure. Okay. A bit of a ways off of being able to storm the festival. It's a good draw. Triggers the Risen Reef and improves my mana, making it more likely I can storm the festival next turn. Do I have enough now? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. No, I would need to draw a land. They don't even want to cast the Blood Tithe Harvester. Interesting. I guess they wanted a more immediate removal spell. In a deck that was less based on landfall triggers, I would be cracking these right away to thin my deck, probably. But I am saving them in case I draw, like, if I drew bad Omnath, they would get converted into cards immediately. So this is a more controlling deck with Memory Deluge. Interesting. You see here, everybody, it's Ashaya, Soul of the Wild, also known as a 10/10. So I can cast Storm the Festival. It requires tapping my Ashaya. See if we draw land. Alright, so now it no longer requires tapping the Ashaya. I'm going to crack all of these to get basics so that I don't have to tap Ashaya to Storm the Festival, because it's going to deal a lot of damage this turn. I guess I am... Oh, I'm not turning on Revolt for Fatal Push. That isn't how that card works. Rude. Well, at least I got to hit them for 11. So far I've played against main deck Spell Pierce, main deck Change the Equation, Well, the main deck change the equation was out of a singleton deck, but still. I guess Spell's Pierce is probably good against the Greasefang decks. They do have a lot of like Grizzly Salvage, Traverse the Ulvenwald kind of stuff. You know what Spell Pierce isn't good against? Ashaya. Ashaya is the soul of the wild. They probably have some number of Go for the Throat type cards in their deck. It'd be really annoying if they had Drown in the Loch, because I turned on the Drown in the Loch by cracking all those Fabled Passages. Should I attack with the Elf? I think so. I'm probably getting to do a point of damage on their chump blocking. If they had if they have a 2-mana removal spell for Ashaya, I'm probably just losing. So it doesn't really matter if the elf gets eaten. Dross. Okay, this is... Oh, they're a combo deck. I understand. How does their combo work if I don't have creatures in my deck? It just doesn't work. Weird. Very weird. Very, very weird. This is definitely not the best hand I've ever seen, but I think it's good enough not to mulligan. I have learned through these games, I think I wish I had a card or two in my sideboard that just could deal with enchantments. It's a little bit surprising to me. But that evidently is what you want to play Explorer. So I played Nissa this turn rather than Risen Reef, specifically because of Bone Crusher Giant. The fact that they had a card that could kill the Nissa right away, that could Go for the Throat. My deck is just chock full of good targets for Go for the Throat, so I'm not really concerned about that. Here, I will play this into a Bone Crusher Giant, just because I don't have a better play. I'm going to be relying on the top of my deck. They didn't have a Bone Crusher Giant. Okay. So I'm just dead if they have Metamorphic Alteration in their hand. I guess I could, in theory, draw into Boseiju to not die. I don't think there's any way that putting a Lotus Cobra into play allows me to win this turn. I guess I'm just going to play my whole hand. Hope. I don't think there's any cards I can chain off the top that allow me to win this turn. And how could it possibly be the case? Actually, no, it is possible. Like, if I hit a land and Omnath, no, maybe. That might actually do something. Probably not, though. This is going better than I thought it was going to. So now I definitely need to hit a land. Alright, we hit the land. Now we need to hit 2 lands, so I can play this Risen Reef. That probably is part of something happening that's good for me. Oh, I didn't need to hit 2 lands just because of the Omnath trigger. So if I play the Risen Reef here, it leaves me with 3 mana. So if I hit Ashaya and a land, I can play that. I'm just trying to figure out, should I play the Lotus Cobra first? I think the answer is no. Had I played the Lotus Cobra first there, I still would not have been able to cast this Storm the Festival, because I would have only had 3 mana because I didn't hit Storm the Festival land. The only scenario where it was better to play the Lotus Cobra first was specifically Storm the Festival land. Are they going to kill me? If they don't have that Metamorphic Alteration card, where's some way to kill all my creatures? Did that kill enough of my creatures for me to die? No. They have 1 more removal spell? No. Oh, I just have played my land first. So I'm going to get the 4 mana from the Omnath. Life in that. I don't think dealing damage to them matters at all this turn. So I think I'll just go with the second Omnath. I think this allows me to Storm the Festival a second time. Another Ashaya doesn't do anything. Hey, we win. I think we win. Maybe we don't win yet. It wasn't actually enough to kill them. It was probably going to be enough that I was going to be able to play the rest of my deck, though. Because it was then I was going to, whenever creatures entered the battlefield, I was going to draw a card in addition to getting all of the Lotus Cobra triggers. Please don't take my good cards. I don't even know what they should take here. Kind of depends on their hand. Seems like they've adopted the try to deny me the mana to cast my spells plan. Which, that might work. I did draw a 3rd land, but it is not a color of mana that allows me to get closer to casting Omnath. Well, if I draw a red land, which I've got Mana Confluence, Secluded Courtyard, a couple of shock lands, things will be going perfectly for me. That's not a red land. I think I'm just going to play both of these. If they don't have a way to kill the Lotus Cobra, it is possible that there are certain top decks where it would have been better to hold the land there, but if they do have a way to kill the Lotus Cobra, and I draw any non-red land, now I'm going to be able to play Ashaya next turn. Okay, at least I get to play Ashaya. Do they have their Metamorphic Alteration card again? They do. I guess I didn't really explain the combo. So they're turning my creature into an Archfiend of Dross, but it doesn't have any oil counters, so I die because I don't have any oil counters. A cute combo, probably not a very competitive combo if we're being honest, because they could just play Shieldred and not have to have Metamorphic Alteration in their deck, but cool. Interesting way to lose. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. This deck is, as we saw in the second game of that last match, you can get some really, really explosive turns, but it does kind of catch up with you when you don't really play hardly any interaction. Like I said in one of the matches, I think that there's certainly room in the sideboard to have some card that is like Naturalize, which that would have been good against the Enigmatic Incarnation deck, and it might have been worth having against the Archfiend of Dross deck. Is there a 2-mana version of Naturalize that also kills flying creatures, or do you have to have 3 mana for that? I don't know. If you're inclined to try this deck, I would say you should probably look to make 1 or 2 changes to the sideboard. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.